Exposed. Heartwarming journey of a 27-year husband after discovering his 58-year wife's life-changing talent. Jake felt the weight of the world on his shoulders as he stood in the garage that had become a second home. Tools hung like ornaments on the wall, but his heart felt heavy, burdened with unspoken fears. He wiped grease from his hands, glancing at the clock. 3 more hours until he could hold Maria's hand, yet his mind raced. Maria, vibrant and lively, a once celebrated artist, now painted the walls of their home with shadows instead of colors. This summer, those shadows threatened to engulf everything they had worked for: a sense of stability, a life together. The small town breathed life into their evenings, with streets dressed in bravado as the vibrant hues of autumn began their slow march. All around, cheerful faces buzzed with excitement for the annual art fair. Heartbeats quickened as preparations began. It was a beacon of hope, but for Jake, it loomed like a storm on the horizon. What if she reveals her art? The neighbors would whisper behind their backs. Could their already strained budget survive another blow? One evening, out of nowhere, Maria announced with bright eyes shimmering with untamed passion, "I want to showcase my work." It was an invitation to dream, but Jake's stomach knotted with doubt. "You mean after all these years?" he breathed, the words heavy on his tongue. "What about our bills? You're throwing our future away for some dream that's decades too late." The words tasted bitter, almost like betrayal. He could see the hurt damage her spirit, yet all he could feel was the overwhelming dread of their realities crashing down. Before he fully understood, Maria seized her brushes, the small instruments that were once her trusted allies, and isolated herself in the sunlit room that had birthed memories of joy and creativity. The silence screamed between them, thick with unexpressed anger and longing for understanding. In his own confined world of steel and metal, Jake felt the cage of self-doubt closing in on him, a culmination of insecurities wrestling within. The turning point came when a supportive neighbor encouraged Maria, suggesting an upcoming art competition. "This could be your moment," she said with a glimmer of hope. Jake's heart sank as Maria made her choice, brushing aside his fears like sunlight through a window. He didn't want to stifle her passion, but the worry gnawed at him. Would they lose everything? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from.
I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the competition deadline loomed, Maria poured her soul into the canvas day and night. Jake's heart twisted as he watched her passion spill out in strokes of color that breathed life into their cramped spaces. Each brushstroke whispered tales of resilience he had never acknowledged. Yet shadows of anxiety still crept over him, masking the bright brilliance of her work. He found himself at a crossroads, watching his wife bloom while feeling rooted in uncertainty. The night before the fair, tension crackled in the air as they stood together, surrounded by her completed piece, a breathtaking canvas that seemed to shimmer with hope. It was the epitome of Maria's vibrant spirit, pulling Jake toward the light, yet forcing him to confront the darkest parts of his own thoughts. What if this moment set them free? But what if it shattered the fragile stability they had? As neighbors whispered with excitement around them, Jake's heart raced. Could one painting change everything? Uncertainty danced between them like a ghost. The questions clung tight. Would the town embrace her talent, or would her dream lead to their downfall? Jake held his breath, caught between despair and hope, unsure if they would find healing or heartbreak at the end of this vibrant journey. Maria's heart thudded in her chest as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow through the windows. She stood before the canvas, filled with both excitement and fear. This piece, laden with her struggles, her love, and lost years, was finally ready to be unveiled. Behind the layers of color, there was a history, a story she longed to share, yet the thought of judgment loomed like a storm cloud over her. Jake watched her from the doorway, anxiety prickling at his skin. She seemed more alive than he had ever seen her, yet the impending fair felt like a landslide ready to consume them both. Despite it all, a sliver of hope flickered within him. Maybe, just maybe, this is what she needs. he thought. But then doubt slithered back in, uninvited. What if they ended up in worse shape than before? Could their fragile existence withstand the storm of public scrutiny? As the hours stretched into the night, Maria tweaked her painting, adjusting colors, adding details that sparked with life. Each stroke was a whisper of her soul, a plea for acceptance, not just from others, but also from herself. She looked to Jake, eyes bright and imploring. "Will you come with me tomorrow?" she asked, voice trembling. Of course, but his voice faltered. Here it was, the moment of truth. "I just worry about what everyone will say, Maria. I can't stand the thought of you getting hurt, or us losing everything because of this." The weight of his words grew heavy between them, and Maria's face dropped for a moment, like a flower losing its bloom. But what if it's not about that? What if for once it's just about me?
She replied quietly, the vulnerability in her voice striking Jake like an unexpected gust of wind. The fierce woman he had known was pleading for him to see, to understand how deeply she yearned for this moment, not just for her art, but for their lives. That night, sleep evaded Jake. He tossed and turned, battling his own thoughts and fears against her dreams. He remembered the laughter they shared, the adventures they embarked on together. Had he allowed a veil of worry to obscure those beautiful memories? What if he chose to support her instead of suffocating her spirit? Morning light crept into their home, casting gentle rays across the cluttered room. Maria was already wide awake, a flurry of energy as she picked up her brush one last time to make small adjustments. She turned to Jake, her face alight with anticipation and hope, and all at once, Jake felt the heaviness in his chest beginning to lift. "Let's go," he finally said, his voice steadier than it had been all night. There was a gleam of surprise in her eyes, and he could see the weight of his words settling within her. "I'll be with you," he added, and the warmth of her smile lit up the room. As they drove toward the fair, Maria couldn't contain her excitement. With every passing block, she spoke animatedly about what this meant for her, her voice a steady metronome of hope. Jake's heart began to sync with hers, and despite the flutter of fear in his stomach, he found himself smiling. But as they approached the town square, the reality of the gathered crowd hit him like a tidal wave. It was a mass of vibrant colors and buzzing excitement, an atmosphere filled with art and laughter, and it overwhelmed Jake in an instant. Maybe this was a mistake, he thought, panic ready to rise, swirling around him. Yet he caught a glimpse of Maria, clutching her paintbrushes, her face beaming with anticipation. And in that moment, he realized something profound. This wasn't just her moment, it was theirs. Could this be the first step toward healing? But as the first whispers of the crowd greeted them, uncertainty washed over him again. Could he really embrace this journey with her, or would his fears hold them hostage? Jake took a deep breath just as Maria stepped forward, ready to reclaim her life through her art. The question echoed in his mind. Would they rise together, or would the shadows of doubt consume them both? The moment Jake stepped out of the car, the lively atmosphere was overwhelming. He felt like a deer frozen in headlights as laughter and chatter filled the air around him. The crowd was buzzing, moving, and blending into a riot of colors and sounds, and he became painfully aware of how small they were in the midst of it all. Maria, oblivious to his spiraling thoughts, adjusted her grip on her paintbrushes. "Look, Jake, that's where they'll hang my piece."
She pointed toward a large easel adorned with vibrant decorations, and despite his unease, he couldn't help be drawn to her enthusiasm. "Yeah, it looks perfect," he managed to say, forcing a smile to cover the tumbling anxiety that churned in his stomach. As they walked through the square, Maria struck up conversations with fellow artists and patrons, her exuberance contrasting with Jake's internal battle. He admired her passion, but also feared what other artists might say. They were seasoned professionals who knew how to critique with a knife-edged precision, and that level of scrutiny terrified him. What if they didn't see the beauty in her work? What if all her hard work was dismissed as mere amateur attempts? "Hey, keep your chin up," Maria said, her voice breaking through his thoughts. She turned to him, her deep brown eyes shimmering with confidence. "This is going to be amazing." He forced a chuckle, trying to absorb her optimism. "Right, amazing," he echoed, though doubt lingered just beneath the surface. As they reached the area designated for the exhibition, Maria stepped toward her easel, her heart pounding with a mix of happiness and fear. A group of people began to gather, and Jake's heart raced, not just for her, but for himself. He stood a few steps behind her, quiet and watchful, feeling like a sentinel ready to protect her from the world. Maria took a deep breath and adjusted her hair nervously,
At that moment, the festival organizer called attention to her piece, inviting people to come closer. She stood proudly, looking up at her work, a canvas bursting with emotion and color. Jake listened, trying to absorb the murmured conversations surrounding her. "Oh, look at the contrast," someone said. "The depth is incredible." He felt a wave of relief wash over him amidst the positive comments swirling around. People were admiring her work, but doubt still loomed in the corners of his mind. Would one harsh critique do it all in? As the crowd grew thicker, Maria turned toward him, her eyes wide with exhilaration. "Did you hear that?" She beamed, that infectious joy lighting up her face. "I did, and it's amazing," he replied, his heart beginning to lift with her excitement. Just then, an older woman stepped forward, tilting her head as she studied the painting intently. Maria smiled, faded slightly, as she approached the piece as if ready to dissect it. "What's this supposed to convey?" the woman asked, her tone flat. Maria froze, her breath hitching in her throat, and Jake felt himself tense up. It's about rediscovery," Maria began, her voice wavering. "Rediscovery? Interesting choice. It seems chaotic," the woman remarked, tilting her head ever so slightly. The words struck Jake as harsh, and he felt an instinctual urge to leap to Maria's defense. But before he could speak, Maria took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing with determination. "Exactly. It's chaotic because that's what life is."
"It's not always pretty, but it's real," she said, her voice gaining strength. Jake felt a swell of pride flood through him. She was standing her ground. Was she really going to embrace this? The crowd murmured, a mix of intrigue and interest, but the older woman merely raised an eyebrow. "Real, huh? You're braver than most artists." "Thank you," Maria replied, a slight tremor in her voice from both nerves and excitement. Jake watched her with new admiration, realization dawning on him. He had been focused so much on his fears that he forgot to see her courage and resilience. Could this moment actually be transformative for them both? As the crowd continued to respond to her work, Maria's smile returned, radiating hope and the uncanny sense of possibility. But just when it seemed everything was going perfectly, Jake felt a familiar twinge of fear creep back in. What if she lost her spark amid the critique? What if this back and forth would break her spirit? In that moment of upheaval, he gripped the edge of the easel, grounding himself. Could he really let her fly, no matter the outcome? As the crowd asked questions, laughed, and expressed admiration, Jake pondered his own truth. Would he choose love and support over fear, or let the shadows win? Amidst the laughter and the art, one question echoed in his mind. Could they redefine their lives and their relationship with this singular moment, or would he stand frozen while she soared? Maria's voice cut through the swirling thoughts in Jake's mind as she continued to engage with the crowd. She was alive, her energy palpable as her words danced over the airwaves, weaving connection with everyone around her. A burst of admiration flooded Jake, followed by an undercurrent of fear. This was her moment, and it was breathtaking to witness her bloom. But how would she handle the negativity surrounding the older woman's remarks? Suddenly, a man stepped forward, sharing his perspective on her artwork. "Life is chaotic. It's beautiful how you captured that," he said, his enthusiasm powerful enough to sway more nods from onlookers. Maria's face lit up, each smile she wore glimmering with hope, while Jake felt himself relaxing. "Exactly," Maria echoed, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "That chaos is where the beauty lies." There was a lightness to her laughter, and for a moment, Jake felt like the clouds of his anxiety were parting. But he quickly sensed the tension lingering in the shadows. Would the previous critique linger like a dark cloud? His musings were interrupted when a little girl no more than 5 stepped forward, her eyes wide. "I love your painting. It's like a rainbow through a party," she exclaimed, her delight infectious. "Thank you, sweetheart." Maria bent down, her smile radiant as she spoke to the girl. That pure joy, so genuine and unfiltered, made Jake's heart swell. In the eyes of a child, there was no judgment, just unfiltered appreciation.
As the crowd applauded, Maria straightened, her gaze darting over to Jake. He flashed her an encouraging grin, hoping to convey the life he saw in her work. The moment held a certain magic that both scared and thrilled him. But just when all seemed bright, the older woman ventured in again. "While I appreciate the enthusiasm," she said, voice dripping with weariness, "being brave doesn't mean you're always right." A chill swept through Jake, igniting his protective instincts anew. Maria's face mirrored his unease before she steadied herself.
Art isn't about being right. It's about expressing what's inside, she responded, the strength in her voice rising like a tide. The crowd shifted, responsive to this newfound intensity. Jake's heart raced. He could feel Maria drawing deeper from within herself, yet he could almost see the worry twinging her features. Was this crowd turning against her? In the silence that followed, he felt something awakening in him too, a resolve. He stepped forward and placed a hand lightly on her shoulder, feeling the warmth of connection. No matter what anyone says, you put your heart into this. That makes it worth something special. Her brow relaxed slightly as she looked at him, eyes breaking through the fog of uncertainty. "Thank you, Jake," she whispered, glancing back at her painting. "I needed that." The older woman huffed, crossing her arms, but the crowd had shifted. Seemingly emboldened, others began chiming in, speaking about the connection they felt with Maria's work. As the discussions intensified, Maria's confidence swelled. She began to engage more, turning the conversation around passionately, each word painting her vision, each laugh echoed their shared journey of vulnerability. Jake watched her, entranced, believing she was finally stepping into her light. "See?" he murmured to himself, heart thumping. But the cheering wasn't continuous. The critical voice remained poised to strike. Would the negativity remain, waiting for its moment to derail her triumph? Jake positioned himself more closely, not just as support, but as a bodyguard against the doubt hovering in the corners, ready to snatch away her hard-won confidence. "Let's show them what you've got," he whispered, his fingers gripping the easel tighter. Could they face this together, or would the raising stakes break them apart? As Jake glanced back at Maria, still radiating strength, a question pulsed in his mind. Could they truly emerge stronger from this trial, or would it shake them both to their core? As the voices in the crowd began to rise and weave around Maria, Jake could feel the energy shifting. Her spirit was like a kite caught in a robust breeze, dancing higher with every word she shared. But the critical remark from the older woman hung heavy in the air, like a storm cloud that refused to dissipate. "Art is so deeply personal," Maria said passionately, her hands animated as she spoke.
"It mirrors our experiences, our struggles. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be true to who we are." Her voice held a tremor of defiance that made Jake want to cheer. He took a breath, studying the crowd. They watched her intently, some nodding along, others still caught in the grasp of doubt. He could sense the divided waters, those who celebrated her creativity and those who questioned its validity. This wasn't just about art, it was about acceptance, about connection, about being vulnerable. Just then, a young man with a shaggy haircut broke the silence, stepping forward with a hesitant smile. "I know what you mean," he admitted, his voice a little shaky. "I've struggled with my own art. It never feels good enough, but it becomes real when we share it, doesn't it?" Jake's heart soared. The young man's vulnerable response seemed to chip away at the older woman's harsh judgment, leaving a crack for warmth and understanding to seep in. "Exactly," Maria beamed, her relief evident as she engaged with him. "When we put ourselves out there, it's like we're saying, 'I'm here, I matter.'" Jake couldn't help but lean in, pushed by an instinct to shield and support. It felt like a rising tide. The crowd, slowly warming to Maria, began contributing more, sharing their own fears and moments of self-doubt. "Your painting reminds me of my sister's laughter, chaotic but full of life," a middle-aged woman said, her eyes brightening. "It's not about perfection, it's about feeling." Her openness fueled others, and soon voices joined in a medley of shared experiences. Yet, amidst the rising harmony, Jake could still feel the scrutiny of the older woman lurking. He glanced in her direction. Was she shifting uneasily, or was it simply wishful thinking? He needed to protect Maria, to keep her light shining, especially now that she was finally unlocking her truth. Maria caught his eye again, her gaze steady and fierce. "Thank you all for believing in art and its power to reveal who we are," she said, her voice wrapping around each listener. A glimmer of tears sparkled at the corners of her eyes, and something soft but powerful settled in Jake's chest. Just when it seemed like victory was within reach, the older woman spoke up again, her tone sarcastic. "That's sweet and all, but altruism won't sell your painting." Behind the biting edge of her remark lay a challenge, but this time Maria didn't flinch. "No," she replied, her voice even and clear. "It might not sell, but if it resonates with just one person, then it has fulfilled its purpose." Jake felt his pulse quicken, a mixture of pride and concern swirling inside him. Was this turning the tide, or was it igniting the flame of confrontation? The crowd simmered like a pot on the brink of boiling over. Emotions danced as heads turned back and forth, absorbing the tension. Jake squeezed Maria's shoulder gently, a silent pledge to stay by her side, no matter what.
They could face this storm together. They had to. With a deep breath, Jake searched her face, a question bubbling up in him like the rising tide. What if she never budges? What if this moment becomes a battle instead of a breakthrough? As Maria looked into his eyes, the weight of the world felt like it balanced on a knife's edge. The air crackled with potential, and behind her fierce determination, he saw a flicker of doubt, the very thing they both feared. Would this moment define them or break them apart? And in the thick of the cacophony, would they find resolution, peace, or perhaps an opening to an even deeper struggle? The crowd's murmur faded into a tense silence, as if everyone was holding their breath. Maria stood like a lighthouse against the dark waves of doubt. The older woman's words hung over them, a weight that pressed down on each heartbeat. But Jake could see something shifting in the air, a kind of energy sparking to life. Art isn't just about popularity, it's about connecting to what's real for us, Maria pushed back, her voice steady and full of defiance. If I create something that moves even one person, that's worth more than 1,000 sales. Applause erupted from the crowd, encouraging and warm, washing over Maria like a protective blanket. Hands clapped, some raised in the air, buoyed by her conviction. Jake could hardly contain his excitement, his heart hammering like a drum. She was owning this moment, reclaiming the space with her conviction. But the older woman wasn't done. You can't live off sentiments, dear, she shot back, her voice sharp as a whip. This is a business, not a therapy session. That tone was a challenge, and Jake sensed a storm brewing in the atmosphere. Maria took a step forward, her posture bold. I refuse to reduce my art to mere commerce, she stated, and it felt like a declaration, a beacon for everyone who felt unheard. The young man from earlier nodded vigorously, stepping closer. Art is about truth. It reflects our humanity. Who cares about the market? He called out, igniting further enthusiasm in the crowd. A wave of agreement rippled through, faces lighting up in solidarity. Jake felt pride swell in him like a balloon, but he also noticed the gravitational pull of the older woman's gaze, a singularity in a sea of hope. For every person who cheered for Maria, he felt the weight of skepticism lurking just behind their backs. Would it crush her spirit if this continued? As cheers rose and someone shouted, "You paint for yourself," Maria seemed to draw strength from every voice, every clapping hand. She turned to the crowd, the energy radiating between them palpable. Exactly. We create because we need to. It reminds us we're not alone. A glimmer of hope sparked in Jake's heart. Maybe this moment could transform into something beautiful, something that would shine.
He wanted so desperately to step forward and let her know how proud he was, how far she had come since the first strokes she'd put on canvas. But in the midst of it all, he turned back to look at the older woman. Her face, still twisted in skepticism, began to shift subtly. Did he see eyebrows relax just a fraction? Was she teetering on the edge of understanding? Before he could process the change, Maria continued. Art is a way to hold up a mirror to society, to explore who we are, not just what we can sell. It's about the connection. Her passion illuminated the space, drawing in those who were still hesitant. Suddenly, the older woman adjusted her stance. To Jake's surprise, she took a step forward, her voice lower but powerful. And what if your truth doesn't match the experience of others? What then? Jake's breath caught. That was a fair question, but it felt like an entire storm was brewing again. Maria paused, her eyes searching, meeting the challenge head-on. I believe that art, like life, is diverse, she responded, her voice softer now, but still rich with determination. We all have different truths. That diversity makes us stronger. The tension twisted in the air, ready to snap. The crowd held its breath. Would the older woman see the light, or would she remain fixed in her place, becoming a wall Maria couldn't break through? As silence enveloped the space,
Jake could feel the collective heartbeat of everyone present, clinging to Maria's words, to her fight. Would this be the turn they needed, or would doubt continue to cast its shadow over their journey together? His heart raced, the uncertainty hanging dangerously in the air, waiting. And in that moment, Jake realized how far Maria had come, a journey he hoped would only take her further into the light. But they both stood at a precipice. What lay on the other side? The room felt electric, every eye locked onto Maria and the older woman, both women standing like warriors on an emotional battlefield. The tension thickened with every heartbeat. Jake could feel 1,000 unspoken words in the air, the kind that lived in the spaces between hope and fear. What would happen next? Would the older woman lean into understanding or continue to stand as a barrier? Maria took a deep breath, her gaze unwavering. "Art teaches us empathy," she said, her words slicing through the quiet like a hot knife through butter. "It shows us we can walk alongside others, even if their paths are different from ours. That's the beauty of it." The crowd began to buzz again, whispers fluttered like frightened birds. Jake's heart ached in solidarity, each of Maria's words pulling him closer to her. He wanted to scream his appreciation, but he stayed rooted in place. How could he not be affected by this moment? It was a fusion of truth and emotion, raw and beautiful. The older woman shifted again, her expression less rigid, a crease forming between her brows. "But what if that empathy doesn't resonate?"
She countered. "We live in a world defined by experiences. How can your art encompass the lived realities of everyone?" With each question, the tension transformed, cracking open new possibilities for discourse. Maria's brow furrowed only slightly, as determination still sang in her veins. Art isn't about fitting everyone into a single frame. It's about encouraging conversations, sparking dialogue, she argued, her voice gaining strength as she spoke, drawing on the energy of the crowd. Art invites others in. It's about finding common ground in our differences. The crowd was now murmuring in agreement, supportive nods and murmurs traveling through like a warm breeze. Jake could see their collective hope shining in the dim light. Maria's face shone with passion, reflecting every voice that stood behind her. Suddenly, the older woman took a step back, mouth slightly ajar as if she were processing everything anew. For a fleeting moment, glimmers of recognition flashed in her eyes. In that instant, Jake hoped she would choose to embrace the light spilling from Maria's words. "Doesn't it also risk misrepresentation?" she finally asked, her voice softer now, bordering on curiosity rather than indignation. "What if you misstep and your art causes more harm than good?" Jake's heart sank, sensing the question bore weight. Would Maria be shaken by this? But he looked on as she faced the challenge head-on, refusing to waver. "We learn from our missteps," she asserted. "That's how growth happens. Art is an evolving conversation, just as we are." The crowd exploded again, a chorus of voices blending into a fervent melody of support. Jake couldn't help but join in, fist pumping above his head, overwhelmed by pride. He loved how Maria illuminated every room she entered, how she held on to hope, even in the face of doubt. The older woman appeared torn, perhaps for the first time grappling with the possibility that she might be wrong, or at least misjudging Maria's intentions. She was searching, and Jake felt a stirring connection rippling through everyone present. Could they stand on the same side for just a moment? Maria took a step closer to her, gentle yet firm. "No one has all the answers, but if we close ourselves off, we'll never find the beauty in our diversity. Maybe we need to embrace that discomfort, together." Time seemed to stretch as silence enveloped the space once more. Would the older woman blink? Would she truly see the flickers of truth illuminating the room? Jake held his breath, heart racing with anticipation. As that silence lingered, the atmosphere shifted, poised on the edge of something profound, the hope of resolution hanging in the air. Would the barriers begin to crumble? Or would doubt and skepticism shroud their journey once more? In that moment, a question danced just above silence, weaving in and out of focus, waiting for a brave answer.
In the pregnant pause, eyes shifted from Maria to the older woman,
each person present holding their breath, anticipating her response. The moment felt almost sacred, the kind of silence where hearts unravel and stories intertwine. Jake felt a knot in his throat. He wanted to believe. Then, the older woman spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've lived a long life full of stories. I've fought battles that shaped who I am, and yet—" She hesitated, glancing down as if weighing her words against everything she had carried inside. The crowd remained totally still, as if the air itself waited on her decision. "But maybe it's time to listen more," she finally admitted. It was a simple statement, yet the weight it carried left everyone stunned. Jake's heart surged. This was the shift they had waited for, the crack in the armor that could allow light to seep through. Maria smiled, a soft yet fierce light illuminating her face. "Exactly. Listening is where understanding begins. We can't paint someone else's canvas without first seeing the colors they've lived through." Her enthusiasm was contagious, causing a ripple of approval throughout the crowd. The mood began to inflate with optimism, filling the room with hopeful energy. "I want to share my story," the older woman said, her voice steadying, new confidence threading through her tone. "But I also want to listen to yours, if you're willing." A murmur of excitement rippled through the crowd. This was it. A bridge was being built. The atmosphere buzzed with the promise of connection, of shared paths converging in unexpected ways. Jake beamed, feeling the tension dissolve like mist in the sunlight. He glanced at Maria, whose eyes sparkled with joy at the breakthrough. The journey they had embarked on, riddled with uncertainty, seemed to summit towards a peak of healing and understanding. But as the chatter began to swell within the room, welcoming the promise of shared stories, Jake felt a tug of urgency. "Maria," he called, grabbing her attention as she beamed at the older woman. "Will you include art in this dialogue?" His emotions spilled out, fueled by the adrenaline of the moment. Maria turned to him with wide eyes, recognizing the question's weight. "Absolutely," she responded, excitement bubbling in her voice. "Art will be the thread that connects our stories, the canvas where we can paint our shared experiences." The crowd erupted in invigorated applause, the air alive with enthusiasm. Yet within the celebration, a thought tiptoed at the edges of Jake's mind. Would everyone be ready to embrace their vulnerabilities? Art could open doors, but would the fears from the past still cast their shadows? As the older woman nodded in agreement, another flicker of hesitation crossed her face. She caught Jake's eye and lowered her voice as if sharing a secret amidst the euphoria. "But what happens when we confront truths that are too painful, too raw?"
Her gaze was piercing, pulling at Jake's heartstrings. He felt that question resonate deeply, a reminder that healing often required looking into the abyss of pain. Would they be brave enough to face it together? The moment of clarity washed over him, stirring a commitment in his chest. Their collective journey was only just beginning. The path forward promised challenges, revelations, and an unwritten narrative longing to unfold. As the crowd continued to cheer, anticipation shimmered in the air. How would they navigate their stories and art? What hidden truths lurked beneath the surface, and would they have the courage to face them? Jake swallowed hard, a mix of excitement and apprehension coursing through him. The real journey was only beginning, revealing itself like a canvas waiting to be painted. What truths would emerge from this beautifully messy interplay of stories? And would they find strength in their vulnerabilities, or would the weight of their pasts hold them back? As the applause echoed through the room, Jake felt an electric buzz of excitement intertwining with uncertainty. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, each person filled with hope and doubt alike, both eager and fearful of the stories that lay ahead. "Let's take a moment," Maria suggested, her voice rising above the chatter. People began to settle, eyes returning to the older woman who now stood at the center of this newly woven tapestry. Jake's heart pounded in sync with the shared breaths of the crowd. Everyone seemed to feel the weight of the moment. The older woman took a deep breath, her features softening. "I want to tell you about a time when I lost everything," she began, her voice tinged with both strength and sorrow. "It was a long time ago, and I didn't know how to get up from that place. But through my pain, I learned that it's okay to ask for help." The vulnerability in her voice hung in the air, each word a gentle nudge inviting others to share their scars. Jake felt his throat tightened, caught between his own memories of struggle and the woman's honesty. It was a reveal so profound, it stripped away the layers of pretense that often clouded connections. Suddenly, his own story didn't seem so far away. What had he lost? What burdens did he carry that he had never voiced? As she continued, he caught sight of Maria's expression, awe mixed with empathy. It seemed to encourage those around them. One by one, faces transformed, hearts opened. A young man stood up, his hands trembling. "I lost my father to cancer last year," he started, his voice shaking but resolute. "I didn't talk about it. I thought if I didn't say it, it wouldn't hurt so much." Murmurs of understanding rippled through the crowd. Jake watched as stories flowed like a river. Each one was a branch feeding into the same emotional current. The air filled with confessions, laughter mixed with tears.
A woman spoke of her battle with anxiety, and again, someone else shared their experience of losing a child. Each narrative resonated deeper than Jake could have imagined. People who once seemed so disparate were now part of a unified chorus of human experience. A melody of pain, growth, and healing filled the space, the sound nearly palpable. But as laughter erupted in response to a light-hearted moment within the stories, the older woman raised her hand gently, asking for quiet again. "Listening," she reiterated, the weight of her earlier words draping heavily over the crowd, "is just as important as sharing. In the space of vulnerability lies trust, and from that trust we can find strength together." Jake's mind buzzed. The connections were forging into something beautiful, yet he sensed something darker stirring beneath the surface. Would they each find the courage to confront the deeper shadows lurking within their hearts? Could they explore the depths of their narratives without falling into despair? He caught Maria's eye, and a silent conversation passed between them. She was ready for the next step. But would everyone else be willing to hear those truths that pierced like thorns? This moment felt monumental, but he knew all too well that the journey toward healing could spiral into uncharted territories. As the room took a collective breath, the excitement and apprehension blended into a tense quiet. What would happen when the stories turned raw and real? In that heartbeat of silence, Jake felt something shift inside him. The courage of the older woman sparked within him a stirring desire to share his own truth, to unveil the hidden parts of his life. But before he could speak, a young girl voiced what everyone was secretly thinking. How do we start the hard conversations, the ones that hurt? And just like that, the air morphed again. The next chapter of this journey beckoned, poised to dive deeper into the whirlwind of their emotions. Would the group courageously explore those conversations, or would they cling to the safety of their unspoken truths? The unified energy in the room surged with each passing second, but a subtle tension lingered, like the calm before a much-needed storm. Jake felt the intensifying pulse of vulnerability ripple through the group as the little girl's innocent question struck a chord in everyone's hearts. Maria stood tall, her bright eyes reflecting the weight of shared emotions as she turned to the girl, an understanding smile gracing her lips. "Great question," Maria said gently, her warmth wrapping around them like a blanket. "It starts with bravery, the courage to speak up and admit when life feels overwhelming." She took a breath, letting the silence settle before adding, "and also the courage to listen with an open heart when someone else shares." Jake watched her, filled with admiration. She was embodying everything they had fought for, the strength to be themselves amidst the chaos.
"I wish I could do that," he thought, uncertainty crashing into him. "What if they think I'm weak?" Just as that doubt squeezed around his heart, he sensed a change. The older woman nodded again, determination blooming within her. "When we confront what hurts, we take away its power over us," she said, her voice growing stronger. "We don't have to carry everything alone. We need to forge connections." Encouraged by her words, a man from the back spoke up. "But what if we don't know how?" His voice trembled a little, and the raw honesty in his question hung in the air. "What if we just feel stuck?" "Stuck," Jake echoed silently. He knew that place all too well. With wisdom and empathy, Maria replied, "It's okay not to know how. Just starting is what matters. Sharing even the smallest piece can ignite change. You don't have to dive into the depths in one breath. It's a journey, one step at a time."
So how do we begin? Piped the young girl again, her innocent eyes wide. A chuckle bloomed in the crowd. They could see it, the budding realization that the hardest part was just recognizing the need for conversation. Soon, a ripple of suggestions started popping up, each voice adding to the chorus. A woman chimed in, "Maybe we start by sharing our story in small groups, a circle where we can all speak and listen safely." "Yes, that's a fantastic idea!" Maria clapped her hands, excitement filling the air. "Let's create a safe space and speak from the heart. Who's ready to share?" With that, the crowd came alive. People began scrambling into smaller circles, eager to dive in. Jake stood frozen for a moment, taken aback by the energy igniting around him. It stirred a yearning deep inside, a need for connection that had lulled for too long. But still, uncertainty gnawed at him. He caught Maria's eye once more, and in that strong gaze, he saw a hand reaching out. She was inviting him to step closer to her journey, the one they were making together. I felt a rush of determination. This was their moment, not just hers, but theirs. "Let's do this," Jake finally thought. If not now, then when? He stepped into the nearest circle, where a room full of welcoming faces turned toward him. With a deep breath, he spoke. "I'll start." The words felt strange tumbling out, but something incredible happened. As he opened his mouth, the words flowed easily. Experiences he had silenced for far too long poured out like a river breaking through a dam. "I've struggled with the fear of being not enough, of losing everything I love because I was too scared to reach out," he confessed, feeling the weight of every heartache unfurling from his chest. The group listened intently, and as he spoke, Jake felt a transition within himself. Time stretched, crackling with significance. It was freeing, his truth hanging in the space between them like an invitation. Would they feel it too? Maria's nodding head, her unwavering support around him, reinforced his bravery.
I realized later that asking for help is not a weakness, it's a sign of strength. We're stronger together. As Jake finished, he glanced around the circle, seeing a mixture of awe and understanding mirrored in the eyes of his peers. He exhaled deeply, heart pounding, but lighter now. In that moment, the older woman responded, "You're brave for sharing that. We all, in some way, face the same fear. Thank you for reminding us we can heal together." Her voice, once sharp, was now soaked in empathy and warmth. The conversation swung toward her, and others began to share their stories, struggles, triumphs, raw honesty. Each voice lifted a burden, cleared the air, and pushed the shadows aside, revealing brighter landscapes. They laughed, cried, and breathed together. As the sun dipped lower, golden light poured through the cracks of the old building, illuminating their sacred circle. Jake felt an overwhelming sense of belonging, of community connecting through shared stories, a family forged in vulnerability. When the sun finally set, he looked at Maria. The paintbrush she once grasped now stood rested in her gentle hand. She had begun painting a community of souls instead of mere canvases, and the realization took his breath away. "It's more about each of us than the art itself," he whispered to her, feeling the weight lift from his shoulders. "Yes, exactly," Maria replied, her face alight. "Every connection becomes art, a part of something greater." As night fell, laughter rang out in the air, carrying with it a new story, one that held hope, vulnerability, and unity. They had embarked on a journey of transformation, one sparked by a single moment, now growing into a blossoming community filled with love, acceptance, and light. But it didn't stop there. Jake realized that this journey would be ongoing, each step becoming a brushstroke in the masterpiece they were creating together. Keep going, he thought resolutely. This transformation, they'd cultivate it, nurture it, and share it with the world. Wouldn't it be beautiful to invite others to join in the dance of vulnerability? They couldn't wait. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to help fuel our message. Comment your reactions and feelings about this journey. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who are searching for words of transformation, healing, and love.